recorded. Okay. I will also send out the link for the Open NCC to everybody. I will also send out the recording, and Kendra, if it's okay with you, I'll send out the PowerPoints as well for you to have. But like I said, and another announcement too is don't forget about NC Ahead. If you're not registered with NC Ahead, please register. Okay, the registration, the membership is not that expensive, but they have an upcoming conference on October 23rd and 24th, and that will be at Johnson Smith University, which is in Charlotte. So please first join as a member, and then also attend. This is excellent information, and it's a good way to network with your peers at both the community colleges and the universities. Okay. So our discussion today is going to be about the interactive process. And basically, I'm going to hand it over to you, Kendra Stallings from Rowan Cabarrus. You go for it. Okay, lady?
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to see if I can share this. Like Trudy said, my name is Kendra Stallings, and I have worked in disability services for a little over 2 years, but been a disability specialist now for over 11. So let's see if I can share my screen. Start my slideshow. Is that coming over?
We can see it. Yeah, it's perfect. Oh, and before you start, I did want to mention that if you are using AI, we cannot allow that at the system office on any of our webinars. So if we do have a couple people, you'll be kicked off, or you need to get out and not use your AI, because we're not allowed to do that because it's unsecure. So just thought I'd let you know. So go ahead, Kendra, you are up.
Perfect. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the interactive process. Of course, all of us have different interactive processes, but it's just good to know what other people are doing, how other people are doing things, and just get some feedback. I don't love talking at people, so very happy for you guys to put questions in the chat or have an interactive conversation. Have pulled a little bit of information for what different people are doing as far as their interactive process. So definitely want to have open dialogue and make this useful to everybody today. Bear with me, I have like 4 screens, so sometimes I'm like, okay. So we're just going to talk about the basic initial contact, some documentation requirements that we look at here at Rowan Cabarrus. What does our intake meeting look like? What does that consist of? How do we evaluate and determine accommodations? Talk a little bit about impairment versus impediment, access versus success. How do we implement accommodations, and then open it up for question and comments. I'm very informal, so if you have questions or comments, please, you can use the chat or raise your hand and unmute. That is fine with me. So how can our students connect with us? That's the big thing. How are we drawing students or letting students know that our Office of Accessibility is here? Our students can reach out many different ways. Some of us have an online form. I know ourselves here at Rowan Cabarrus, we use the Accommodate system. So on our website is a link that says apply here for accommodations. Some of us use email. We do get emails from students where we can say, hey, this is our link or this is our process. People do call. Slides are not moving forward. Okay. Let's see. Let me try it again. You see it now?
Yes.
Thank you. The phone, of course, they can call us and we can walk them through that process as well. We also have walk-ins. If it's not super, super busy season, I'm happy to sit down with anybody, walk them through our process. And then we also have referrals from our advisors, our faculty, counselors out in our school systems, because we do partner with local high schools. Something that we have implemented here at Rowan Cabarrus is we've started doing webinars at the beginning of each semester called Student Accommodations 101. And we've sent that out to everyone who's enrolled. We send it out to our early college, and it's a 30-minute webinar where we talk about what accommodations are, who would qualify, and what the steps are to get connected with our office. So we have found that that's really helpful as well for letting students know about resources on campus. So when our students do apply or reach out to us, we aim to reply within 48 to 72 business hours. We can't, sometimes it's a shorter amount of time, sometimes it's longer, just depending on the volume, but we really try to get back to them within 3 days. We do set appointments for them, especially our new students that are incoming, and we really, really like to be flexible. So we do those appointments in person. We can do them in an online capacity, such as Zoom or Teams. And then we're also open to having those phone conversations if they don't have access to a lot of the technologies. We explain the next steps to them, talk to them about what the expectations are for that intake meeting. We talk about the documentation that they might need. And then if possible, we'll send a calendar invite to them or an email reminder. Not always possible, doesn't always happen, but it's always just great to confirm, hey, this is when we said we'd meet, and this is kind of what our expectations are. One of the best practice tips that we've been utilizing is we sent out contact options and a statement to be on all the syllabus and all of the classes, so our students can see how to connect, who they need to connect with if they need accommodations. We also have that in our student portal and campus communications that go out, so the students know how to get those services early. So really having that on the syllabus. If a student is having difficulty in a class or said they had accommodations in the past and they don't have them now, instructors know where to send them, or they have that information on their syllabus. Is it moving forward still? Okay. So documentation requirements. This is a big one, and every school is different. I used to be super, super strict because I came from vocational rehabilitation, and I was used to having like a 600-page policy manual that told me what I needed, who I needed it from, down to how old something could be. And it's a lot more gray in the community college, even in the college world. So every college is going to have their idea of what's right, what's not right. So I'm just going to talk about a few basics that we try to abide by here at Rowan Cabarrus. So one acceptable document type would be an IEP or 504, especially if they have that psychological attached to it. Something that I'm mindful when I look at that IEP or 504 is of the diagnosis and what information is that IEP giving me. A lot of times when I see an IEP with like an OHI, which is like other health impairment, or it doesn't exactly list things out, I may ask for additional documentation. A lot of times though, when I see like learning disability or intellectual disability, a lot of the information I need could be housed in that IEP. 504s are a little bit more tricky because they don't always give us as much information, but depending on the conversation that I have with the student and the issues that they're having, it may be an acceptable form. They can have a medical provider note. That note has to indicate the condition, what the impact is, give recommendations. Of course, a psychoeducational evaluation or a psychological or a neurological evaluation. And then we also have a form, which a lot of schools do, that doctors can fill out. And I see a hand raised. Yes, Miss Tara. I cannot hear you. Try again. Oh, Not sure what's going on with your mic. Do you want to just input your question in the chat? While you are typing in the chat, I am gonna finish these other 2 points and come back to your question. Is that okay? Okay, awesome. Some key elements that we look for in our documentation is we definitely want a diagnosis or a clear understanding of what their condition is. Definitely want to know what their functional limitations are or their impact, and then any recommended accommodations. I will request, like I said previously, additional documentation if the diagnosis is unclear or if the accommodations are not supported by the documentation. I had one student, I'll give you an example. I had one student who was telling me that they were having issues with their vision, and but it was their primary care doctor who wrote the note, and they were saying that glasses would fix the problem. With it being a vision impairment, I was like, I need some information from your ophthalmologist or your eye doctor, somebody who specializes in that. So best practice, put these guidelines on your website so students can refer back to them. So we have a section on our website, and I'm going to see if it'll let me click it and pull it up and share with you guys where it lives. And Tara said, if the psych is from childhood, but the condition is neurodevelopmental, do you accept it? It depends on how old it is. A lot of times when it's developmental, as we get older, things can change. So I'd always like to have like your adaptive behaviors reassessed. But it depends on kind of what they're asking for and if that psych eval is coupled with something else. Like, do they have a note from a doctor? Are they also seeing a therapist? Do they have an IEP in the school system? So if it was just a psych, probably not. I'm gonna want some more information.
Can you hear me now?
Excuse me? I can hear you now. No, I can hear you now.
I changed my, so if it's a condition though that is not, that you will not outgrow, like if you have dyslexia, right, it can be remediated, but you're not gonna outgrow it. Or if you have some other
Like
dysgraphia,
autism, dysgraphia.
then
I would accept it.
okay, I was going to say, because, you know, I have students who are older and then I'm not going to send them back to get another psych ed to see if they still, I mean, I know you don't outgrow those things. Again, they can only be remediated. So,
Agreed. Agreed.
yeah, okay. So, I just
so things that you
to-
don't outgrow, yeah, like your learning disabilities, your autism, your intellectual disabilities, I'm not going to make you get an updated psychological for it, because it's not going to change. I mean, like I said, some of your adaptive behaviors may change, but that's where you're having that conversation, and we'll talk a little bit more where you're having that conversation with your student to understand as they've grown or as they've been in school, how they feel like that disability has impacted them.
Okay.
So you're also using, you know, your documentation, but your interview with your student as documentation as well.
I have one more question, if that's okay. So what if they, like I've had a handful of students recently who have come in, like, and they have an occupational course of study diploma. And so when I'm looking at if they have like a psych ed at all, you know, there's no discrepancy, right? So they're not diagnosed officially with a learning disability, but obviously there are some learning issues there. So I'm also just accepting those, like, because there's no diagnosis. You know, they're not going to have dyslexia or dysgraphia if their IQ is like 69, and then that just sort of is what it is. But they have like an IEP or something that shows what accommodations or things that they had in the past.
And they should have up on their I don't know how your IEP or 504, like it'll say learning disability or like borderline ID. So with a low IQ, they're going to have some kind of ID diagnosis. They should with a low IQ like that. Yeah. I would still accept that. Yes.
Okay. I've just seen, I've seen a couple though that don't have like anything, but I'll see the IQ. So anyway, I don't want to hog the time.
That's okay. I think if you see the IQ and you know, hey, this IQ is in like the borderline range or wherever it would fall, I definitely think that's acceptable. You know, you can look and you do see some of their scores, right, from their psychological. So it'll give you like their broad scores, or where they're scoring, or what grade level they're scoring at in reading or math. So I would definitely look at those and talk about what do they need to kind of be successful. And I worked with OCS students for 8-9 years, so I just kind of know from reading their IEPs where they're at. And I'm like, yes, you definitely need accommodations. And a lot of times what we are going to find is our students who are in that occupational course of study usually do have some type of IEP and probably do need accommodations. And again, that's kind of a discussion of what did they get in high school, why did they get it, and what do we think they're going to need in college based on what we're seeing.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. No.
And anybody else on the board wants to chime in, that's just my personal opinion on it. If anybody else wants to give feedback.
Well, Kendra, this is Trudy. I think it's really important. You were wonderful talking about this, but it's really important that we don't put a financial burden on reevaluations.
Agreed. Yes.
You know, if you know that if during the interactive process with what is Kendra's going to go into is very clear. Why make them have a reevaluation that costs about $2,000, if not more, because their evaluation's 3 or 5 years old, and we really need to follow that. Is look at the financial burden that we're placing on a student. Is that necessary? So, and most times it's not.
Yeah. And when you see us talk about the head recommendations, you'll see why, you know, if there's some sort of documentation, we want to try to make it work, and why our intake with our individual is so important, because we can use so much of that information as well as documentation. I was going to share with you on my screen, but we'll come back to it. But yeah, if you have your documentations guidelines outlined on your website, it's a great place to be able to refer people back to. And we've recently updated our website to show that. And we always do have a disclaimer there that if you have any questions, or if you don't have this documentation, still reach out to us. We can work together to figure out what you need to be successful. So the student intake meeting. So our students have contacted us, they've applied for accommodations. And so the next step is we're going to have an intake meeting with them, and everyone does this differently, but I like to meet again, either in person or virtually, and sit down and talk to them. I am a licensed counselor, so I might do it a little different than others, but I do like to have a 30-minute to an hour conversation to just build that rapport with my students. So just let them know that this is a collaborative process. We're going to work together. This is where I'm going to gather that information. So I may already have their records. And we're going to talk about, hey, what is your diagnosis? How do you feel like that's impacting you in the classroom? What do you feel like you don't have access to, or you need better access to? Just really from their perspective and their own words, and hearing them. Before I even say we can do A, B, C, or D, I let them tell me, what do you need? What have you had in the past? What has worked? What hasn't worked? I don't like necessarily to have like a pick list. We used to have brochures, or even our website, that would list like frequently asked for accommodations. And I've just tried to get away from that, because I want to approach it very individualized. Everybody needs something different. Everyone is different. You may have the same disability, but you may be different. So just having that conversation with them. I like to get to know them. What program of study are they in? What are they learning? What are their goals? We also talk about the responsibilities, so the students will understand that they have to be participants in the process. They have to be able to advocate for themselves. They'll understand the responsibilities of the faculty. So our faculty have to implement the accommodations, and we do ask our faculty to communicate with us if there's any questions or they have any concerns. And then kind of our role, we're here to look at your documentation, recommend accommodations, and support you with that equal access. And I really like to focus on that access piece. A really best practice tip that I have learned through all my years is documentation. So documenting these discussions, the accommodations that we've agreed upon. If there were accommodations that we discussed that weren't approved, documenting that and why. I just really like to make sure that there's clarity or consistency. So if I was to leave, somebody could read this intake note and understand what the student needed and what the expectations were that we discussed. Okay, so intake meeting forms. So there's a Google Drive folder, and I've worked with Carolyn at Blue Ridge Community College. I think Tuesday had uploaded some of her forms. We all use a lot of different forms for different processes. So there are different forms that people use to request accommodations. People do sign accommodation agreements. There's a disability verification form that several of schools use. And then we have some accommodation specific agreements, such as record lecture, personal attendant, seizure response, extended time. I can show you all some of these different forms or show you what we use, or there's a link to this Google Drive folder and you'll be able to see them. So y'all let me know. Do y'all want me to raise your hand if you want me to show some of these to you, or if you just kind of want to go back and we can have conversations at the end, or people can share kind of what they do. Yes, people want to see forms. Okay, so I'm going to pull up some different forms so you guys can see. Yes, I do have a flexible attendance form, show and share. Okay, so we will do some show and share. Bear with me, like I have a ton of screens open, so just bear with me so I can make sure you guys are seeing what I'm seeing.
Take your time, Kendra. You're not in a hurry. And keep in mind that we will have these posted also on that open NCCC.
Okay. So I'm going
to. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, that is fine. And some of them, a lot of them are Carolyn's, because we have a very automated process too, which I believe she shared in the past, Trudy. And Tuesday, I think some of yours are in there as well, and you've shared in the past too. Okay, let me see if I can go get on this. Okay, so this is our website at Rowan and Cabarrus. When our students are applying for accommodations, this is our intake form. Can everybody see that? So they will click here. Everything is automated. So they will put their first name, last name, date of birth, their ID, their email, their phone number. We do ask if they're requesting for a temporary accommodation. If they would click no, then we go into a whole intake. And even though I have them do this whole intake, I do review this intake with them when we meet. So we ask them if they're currently working, what jobs they've had in the past, what their career goals are, how their family support is, their diagnoses, how they feel like their diagnoses impacts them. We talk about their general health, if they're receiving support from other agencies, what education level they've completed, if they've had an IEP or 504, what campus are they on. And the campus question is really, there's several of us that work with accommodations, and we're broken down by campus, so that way we know who to assign it to. We talk about like what type of learner they are, do they study, what do they have difficulty with, and then we talk about some other things that they might have difficulty doing, and then they can specify what they need for accommodations. They're reading all their acknowledgments and agreements here. So you'll see a lot of people have them sign different agreements. Ours are just already built in. They will sign off, and that will come to us at Rowan Cabarrus. Other schools, this is Blue Ridge. This is their request for accommodations. So their individuals will fill this out. put kind of what they're requesting, talking about how it impacts their functioning, and the student will sign and date it. If anybody else wants to share, they can. I'm going to go through a couple other ones. Blue Ridge as well. Carolyn shared this with me. They have an accommodation agreement. So it talks about them entering into this agreement, what the student is agreeing to. Again, this is stuff for us that is built in. But for them, it's not. Ours is built into our application. And yes, we use Accommodate, Heather. We use the Accommodate system. Somebody said, what do we do? And it is Accommodate. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
No, I'm just struggling with technology today. So that's all.
No worries. You're like, I need that system. We are very lucky to have gotten it. I think they applied for it before I was here through a grant when there was COVID money, and it's just worked so well that we've been able to keep it.
How much are you paying for that?
I think annually it's about 12,000.
Okay. And this may not be the right time or place, and so you can all shut me down, but who else is using Maxient for their accommodation process? I feel like Demetria was at one point.
Demetria was, yeah.
Yeah.
And we do use Maxient too, Heather, but we use Maxient for like our Title IX.
Sure. And that's basically what we've been using ours for. Like, I don't use it yet, but my supervisor went to a conference this past summer and learned like all the things you can do with Maxient. And she's like, it's included. Why don't we use it? And I was like, I don't know. So
I've heard it's hard. It's
yeah,
hard to navigate for accommodations.
Yeah. So I was curious if anybody else was using that, if they had insight into it. So yeah, maybe we all need to get together and have like a meeting with food and drink about it.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to show you guys our system and how the Accommodate system on our end works. Anytime. Yeah, just call me. I'd be happy to show you. Yeah, so different people have different intake forms. Tuesday, I know you have something different that you use. Heather, do you have a specific intake form that you use? She sent ours. Laura just sent hers from Surrey.
I have a web page. Like, we use SAM. We use Student Accommodation Manager out of Georgia Tech. It's a quick-based platforms. It's your Honda Civic version of Accommodate. So it's like,
okay.
And that's how they put it out there as well. Like, it's your bare bones, but it is on our website, and I can share that link, and you can see what it looks like from the student intake side.
Let's see some other forms that I was going to share. This is our disability documentation form that we use. We have linked it on our websites, and this is what we send students to have their doctors fill out. So again, we have them have their name, their ID, date of birth, diagnosis, that DSM-5 code. How does the student's condition or symptoms impact life activities, any treatments or medications? Does the medication impact you? The duration, progress, and recommended accommodations. And again, this is where we have our professional put their information. And so other people are uploading some of their intake forms as well, kind of what that looks like. Again, this will all be in a folder that we'll send out. Some people have consent to release forms. So if you're trying to exchange information between outside agencies, interagencies, a parent, a family, you could utilize this. What everybody uses is different. Somebody did ask me about extended time on assignments and flexible on that. Bear with me, I had it all up. Here we go. And so the way everybody does extended time on assignments, again, is different. But this is our agreement that we have students sign. And anytime we send out an accommodation letter with an extended time on assignments accommodation, we have the student sign this and we send this along with it. It goes down to talk about what our expectations are for this accommodation. What we found is a lot of students were requesting this and wanting it as like a blanket statement to cover them. And a lot of individuals that were requesting this had diagnoses that giving them extended time do they really need the extended time, or is it more of a time management problem? Because a lot of our instructors were giving weeks or 2 weeks for assignments and students still weren't getting them done. So a lot of our extended time on assignments accommodation is given for individuals who have conditions that are episodic in nature. They can have problematic symptoms, conditions that require hospitalizations. Most assignments have established due dates, and we have that discussion with our students. And you know in advance. So we expect you to kind of try to plan, be good with your time management. But we do tell them if they are approved for this, usually our, I don't want to say advice, our recommendation is to give the students up to 2 additional days to complete an assignment. It is not automatically applied to all assignments, and it's not invoked retroactively. So if you missed assignments 2 or 3 weeks ago, we can't do this retroactively. It's not unlimited extensions. You're still accountable to the standards set forth on that syllabus. We don't fundamentally alter or waive those course requirements. And then we just talk a little bit about the student's responsibility and why their request may be denied. Anytime that a student does want to use this accommodation and they're emailing their instructors asking for an extension, we do ask that they not only copy the instructor on it, but also copy us on it as well. And again, out of, I think we have 200 or 250 students with accommodations, I'd say we have less than 20 that have this accommodation. So my inbox is not going to be flooded with requests for this. So we do have them sign that. And let me see if I can find our flexibility with attendance one. And it's very similar to that one. Again, our students, and where this really comes in is there's some programs that you have to get hours at. So we have a cosmetology program. So they may not be able to have really flexibility with attendance because they have to get so many hours within that program. Same with nursing and their clinicals. Now, with some of those programs, if something, really big comes up and they do have to make that up, they do have that option. But we do talk about how we can't change the requirements. So if the nursing program says you have to get 60 clinical hours, you have to get 60 clinical hours. We can't change that. Our students are still responsible for any of the content they miss with that flexibility of attendance. And then we talk about at the discretion, the instructor could do some alternative work, alternative assignments. I've never had that happen. I think flexibility of attendance, I think only 2 of our students have this. So it's very rarely given out. But we again have them sign this and we send it off to the instructors, and we do have a long conversation about the expectations and what that looks like. To think if there was any other forms. Y'all see the PowerPoint still? Do you have any questions about any of those forms, feedback?
Did you have a request? Did you have a request to renew form? I think I saw that.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
but it takes them into our system and they'll renew through our system.
Right, for each, so you tell them each semester they have
Yep.
to, that's right, okay, renew.
Yep.
Okay.
And I will,
I think I saw it. I think I
yeah,
saw
and I
that.
will talk about that. We do require them to renew each semester.
Okay.
Again, we are blessed. So the Accommodate system, what that system allows us to do is send out like mass emails to our caseload. And so I am able to say, hey, you had accommodations last semester. It's time to renew. Go in there, renew those accommodations. If we scheduled a meeting, if you feel like something didn't work or we need to schedule a meeting, let's schedule a meeting. Usually those individuals that are getting like your extended time on your assignments or your flexibility with attendance, I do want to meet with them just to see how their semester went. If they use that accommodation, just talk about it, just remind them kind of what the expectations are up front. We are a school that also has the Career and College Promise or dual enrollment. We also have an early college. A big thing there is just making sure that you have those relationships with the faculty and staff on your campus, and then also that your students understand those differences between high school and college accommodations. I have a really great relationship with our early college liaison and our CCP advising staff. So they will send me their students. I will block off time on my calendar. I will meet with them individually. I will let them know what the differences are, really have a conversation with them about what to expect. And I can pull this up so you guys can see it. We have actually put this on our website, our differences between, we were getting so many questions about it, and we just revamped our website. So if you look, we have high school versus college and the different laws. And then we talk about what the differences are in high school versus college. So we talk about, we don't do modified assignments or modified grading. We don't change the format of testing as far as if it's a fill in the blank test, it's going to be a fill in the blank test. We're not going to make it multiple choice for you. So we do walk those students through that. So we've met with our student, we've done our intake, evaluating and determining their medical records. This comes right off the AHEAD website, the link there. Primary documentation, student self-report. So we can take student self-report. I always say be careful with that. I like some kind of documentation and student self-report. That way I'm covered. I've seen all of the person, secondary documentation, observation, interaction, and then your tertiary documentation, so your external documentation. So this is documentation from your doctors, your IEPs, any of that. It's rare that I'm going to grant an accommodation just on a student just talking to me, student report, not having documentation. I'm not going to say I've never, ever done it. Because again, I don't want to create an undue hardship on somebody that is having difficulties and they're not able to afford testing or get to their doctor. Anybody else want to touch on that?
Andra, this is Trudy again. I'm sorry, my camera won't work now. I don't
You're
know.
fine.
I'm with Tara, So it just came up like 2 weeks ago in a meeting with a student governance group that they asked about documentation. And one of the questions was if a student had never been diagnosed, had never had a diagnosis, but could they go to disability services? And I said, you know what? At that point, if they have never been diagnosed by a physician and they just come into your office and say they need accommodations, then you need tertiary documentation. You need something from a third party to show that you actually have a disability and how that disability is a barrier to your access.
Yep.
Just saying, coming into your office and say, yeah, I think I have it. No, that doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
You really do need, at that point, if they've never ever been to a physician or a psychiatrist or anybody like that that can provide documentation that they actually have a disability, then they do need to go to tertiary documentation to show that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I have only approved it twice. The one time I approved it, the student didn't have her documentation, didn't have it, but I had worked with her in the high school and had seen it. So I knew she had it. I knew her diagnosis. I had worked with her years before, so I could testify. I'd seen her, I'd seen all her information. She just didn't have a hard copy of it. And then in the other case, it was a student that had an IEP or 504 in high school. And they really did try to get it, and they weren't able to get a copy of that. And it was a learning disability. And sometimes that's hard if you've let a couple of years go by and you have that learning disability and you had that in high school. It's really hard to get that documentation. But it's very rare that I would ever approve that, like Trudy said, without having some type of documentation. And so I always talk about impairment versus impediment. I love this conversation. So your impairment is your loss of your normal, your physical or mental abilities. So that's like your diagnosis. So think like ADHD, that would be an impairment. Your impediment is whatever hinders that progress. So when we're looking at giving those accommodations, we really want to pick accommodations that address those impediments. And we want it to directly be related to that impairment. And I used to have to write really long plans and explain how this stuff interacted in my previous lives. And so an example would be, so a student has ADHD, which is your impairment, and then they may struggle with completing those timed exams, which is your impediment piece. So what would an accommodation be? How could we give them more equal access? So it would be extended time on exams would remove that barrier. So it's a great way to think about things and look at things when we're giving those accommodations. Best practice trip, our accommodations really need to be focused on removing those barriers caused by the impairment. We don't want to alter, again, those course requirements or course functions. And then, of course, you all have heard access versus success. We're here to give you access. We want you to be successful, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything we do is going to make you successful. You still have to work at it, right? So our college level accommodations are here to ensure that you have equal access. So the playing field is level. It doesn't mean that you're going to have improved success or your grades will improve. We hope that's the case because we're giving you those accommodations. We're making things easier to access. We hope we would see your grades improve, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your grades will. If you're not studying for a test, you're not going to pass it. I had one student who had a diagnosis and needed a read aloud. And so I read the test aloud and she didn't pass it. And she said, well, I can take it again. And I said, okay, well, when do you want to schedule to take it again? And she said, I'm going to take it again tomorrow. And I said, well, what are you going to do different between today and tomorrow? Because if you don't study, you're going to get the same outcome. Whether I'm reading it aloud or you're reading it, it looks like you're probably going to get the same outcome. So you still have to study. You still have to put in the effort. Again, accommodations, they're not meant to make the courses easier or tailor instruction to like a personal learning style. We want to remove those barriers. Clearly communicating this to students that the accommodations level the playing field, but don't change the learning expectations or outcomes. So when I am meeting with my students, we do talk about what the expectations are, how things aren't going to change. They still have to do all the work required. Again, we have that conversation of how accommodations are different here in college versus high school. Because a lot of my first time students are so used to how things were done in high school. And then implementation, and everyone has a different way to implement their accommodations. So how do those accommodations letters get to the faculty? For us, it's sent through a portal and they sign it and we can see that they've signed it and they've received it. Some accessibility offices email to instructors. Some accessibility offices give the letter to the students, and the students are responsible for ensuring that their instructors give it. How often are we sending this request? Are we sending it yearly? Are we making them renew semesterly? Make sure when we're talking to our students that we're letting them know the expectations. Before the student leaves my office, the last two things that I always say is, remember, I've sent your accommodation letters. You have a copy of it. Remember to follow up with your instructor to make sure they've received it, to talk about it. If there's anything in there such as testing and you're in a separate setting, where do they want you to test? Because we have different testing locations. How do they want to work if you have preferential seating? Just talk to your instructor. You don't have to tell your instructor your diagnosis, but just talk about how you want those accommodations implemented. And then if they need training, of course, on like how to use the screen reader or note-taking software, if they have an alternative request, or they need to know how to schedule testing, or if we need to schedule interpreting. So making sure that everybody understands whose role it is and how to figure that out. And so that's kind of a quick overview of what we do here at Rowan Cabarrus, how we approach accommodations in the interactive process. Any questions or
Andrew, I see a couple of hands raised by Laura and Teresa,
Yes.
but I'm not sure if they just didn't forget to put their hands down. And Samantha, so if you do have questions, go ahead and unmic yourself and ask away. I do want you to know that we will put this, like I said, on the open NCCC. And I will also, you'll get the slides, Kendra's slides, and the recording that will have all of these links to it. Also, Vance Granville, Kathy Davis could not attend. She had a conflict, but she sent me also a couple intake forms as well that are already posted on the open NCCC. So I really encourage you to go ahead and go into that site and register so that you can obtain all of the information that, you know, intake and documentation and webinars that you want. So let's open it up for, Kendra, you did a great job. Open it up for anybody else who has more to add, and I'll be quiet.
Definitely, if anybody wants to share something that they do different or an idea that they had, or anybody has any questions about how to make something more efficient or a process better. Yes, Bruce. Go ahead, Bruce.
Just a quick comment on something you touched on earlier. It's really nice to see that our professionalism is being recognized more these days, in the sense that we've been given the flexibility to kind of identify or recognize a disability, and as you said, maybe not have to fully supplement it with documentation. But on the other hand, I imagine you also have a conversation with the student, depending on what their academic track is, on what type of documentation they may have to present in the future related to any kind of licensing, certification situations, those types of things too.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, I forgot to include that. So I am over all of the accommodations for our health science programs. So that's nursing, radiography, OTA. So I am very upfront with these individuals, letting them know I've seen an increase in requests for accommodations, and they are bringing me their doctor's writing them a letter, or their doctor is filling out a form. I let them know while that may suffice for accommodations here at the community college, when they do go take their NCLEX or whatever testing that they are taking through the state, they may be required to give more substantial documentation. And so a lot of times, Bruce, I do encourage them to really have that diagnosis documented, ensure they're seeking treatment or they're with a licensed professional, or that we've seen a lot of state places do want you to have that psychological. So just giving them resources of where they may be able to get that testing done, or just letting them know you have 2 years to get this documentation if it is truly something that you're having difficulty with. So yes, I am very upfront and have that discussion with them that while their documentation may meet my needs, when they get to the state level, it may not meet the needs there. So they need to be prepared for that or start looking into what is the requirement at that level. Thank you for bringing that up.
I think Samantha has her hand up. Samantha, do you want to unmute?
She had to step to the restroom real quick.
Somebody asked in the chat if we ever verify the physician's documentation when we're using the college form. We have before. We had some students who had documentation that looked exactly alike, said exactly the same thing. And sad to say, one student did just white out another student's name and put their name. So we have had to verify documentation before.
And I think that's good practice, because we do know that there are agencies out there that can, for $25, send you a certificate or something stating what you have, you know, a disability or something like that. And it's not legitimate, but it's a big business out there right now. And a lot of our students already know about that. And so they are utilizing that service when they actually do not have a disability. And it's unusual when I get calls when it's the same clinic that has 8 students in a particular program with the same diagnosis, the same so-called physician. I would not accept. And unfortunately, probably one of those students does have a disability and does need those accommodations. But I do really question the high rate of our students that are claiming disabilities in a particular program because of the competition. And I would definitely do my due diligence, because it's way out of hand across the entire state, not just a particular college.
When you get 10 letters and they're from some suite in Las Vegas, it kind of raises a little bit of a red flag. It's like the same issue we've dealt with for a few years now with service animals. And for $25, you can buy the vest online.
Barbara, did you unmuted yourself? Do you have a question? Barbara Plum?
I did.
You can speak if you would like, Barbara, or just put it in the chat. Oh, just answered it. Okay. Great questions. Any other questions, or board members have anything to add? I will say, when I first started, I was like, oh, sitting down with a student for 30 to 45 minutes when you have, 200 sometimes can seem overwhelming. But if you really do your due diligence and meet with them and make sure that they understand the expectations moving forward, at least at your first meeting, then your next couple of meetings that you're having with them may not be so detail oriented, maybe a check-in. So I have found having those more in-depth conversations, even though they take more time, has been helpful.
We just got a comment about the NCC, the Open NCCC. That's hard to say. I don't know why they did that. Open NCCC. Yes, once you register, and you may not have access right away. I don't know. It's been a while since I registered. But once you register, then you go into groups and you look for disability services. Okay. And we do have a lovely icon that Kendra provided us with. It's easy access and it's under disability services. But you also can access other groups as well. So yeah, you got it, Jenna. And we will be adding more and more information. And like I said, if you have forms, intake forms, any information, documentation, or request, Tuesday and I are the administrators of this, and we can easily add that information to it. We want this to be a user-friendly format, and we want you to be able to use it and learn from it. So.
I have a question, or just a question, maybe comment. With accommodations, I've had students that have requested accommodations, put in their paperwork, and then I'd have an instructor come back and say, oh, I talked to the student and they decided they didn't want these accommodations. And so then I talked to the student, and the students would say, no, I'm going to keep them. I want to keep them in place. I may not use all of them right now, but I want to keep them in place. Or maybe I'm going to use all of them but one. Do you think I should have a form that they sign off on and say, I'm not going to use this accommodation now, but I am going to use these to clarify which ones they want to do now, if they're changing from the beginning of what they originally said, especially when I've got an instructor telling me one thing and then the student's saying something different, or when they're changing from what they originally did from the beginning.
A couple things, and other people can chime in. I think accommodations, they can decide at any point in time they want to use them or they don't want to use them. So I think that's up to their discretion. But continuing to have that conversation with the instructor and with the student to make sure that they are still being offered that accommodation. But I have some who say, let's just use extended time. They want extended time on their test, but they still finish it earlier, finish it in the amount of time that the instructor would have given them. So they're not necessarily using it, but it's there in case that they do need it. I would be hesitant like taking anything away in case they do need to come back and they do need to use it. But also I would definitely want to sit down and have a conversation with the student about why or why not they're using it. Or why they don't feel like they need it. And that's kind of why we like to renew semesterly here, so we can have those conversations. Did you utilize this? Did you not? Did things go well? Are there things that we could improve on? What can we help you with? That's just my opinion. Anybody else, feel free to chime in.
Well, I renew semesterly too.
Well, when we approve accommodations too, we don't necessarily know, and the student doesn't necessarily know until they get more into the class about what combination and to what extent they're going to want to use it as well too. So for instance, we can approve reduced distraction setting for testing. The student may say, oh, I'm perfectly comfortable if the instructor makes sure I sit on the end of a row and I'm near a window where I've got the sunlight or whatever and that type of thing. And that's their idea of a reduced distraction setting rather than maybe having to come to a separate location in another room and whatever. So although we approve the accommodation, there's a little personalization as we go along in the process that comes too.
Right, okay.
Samantha, you still have your hand up. Do you have anything that you want to add?
I don't think she came back.
Well, Kendra, I think you did a phenomenal job. This was wonderful. As always, with your expertise and knowledge and experience, kudos to you, and thank you so much for taking on this task. It's a very um, difficult topic to talk about. But you know, Rowan Cabarrus has everything in its place, and it sounds like you are, you know, running it very smoothly. And thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate everything that you do. And I also appreciate everybody that, you know, yesterday when I put out a help um, for some information for Holly regarding, you know, proctoring test. And a lot of people chimed in, and that's very valuable. And I so appreciate when I send those out. It just, when there's information and people participate and bring in your expertise, it's not that I don't know the answers. I usually do, but I don't want to share my opinion. I want to know exactly what's going on in the field. I don't work with students, you guys do. So I think it's really, really important that you share that information. And I am so proud that I'm on this team, you know, that it made me so proud of all of the people that participated and sent their comments. It just meant a lot to me. So thank you all. And like I said, I will send out the recordings, I'll send out the PowerPoint, and also if you go into Open NCCC, you will have also the intake forms loaded up there with the help of Tuesday. Tuesday, I'm relying on you big time, girl. But Tuesday and I will get that loaded up. And again, if anybody also wants additional information loaded up on that site, please send us those PowerPoints or documentations, and we are happy to do